as we have discussed about primary key, foreign key, and what is referential integrity and why it is supposed to be maintained within a relational database management system. So, according to me, being a data engineer, we were designing a database where multiple tables were created as a rough summary, and we were trying to create a relation so that this table is related to that particular table. As we now know what is a primary key and a foreign key, let's try to relate this table and let's try to replicate those same things practically, and let's understand how does the other commands are going to work for the same. So if I show you that this is a rough structure which we created initially, now let's try to create the relationships from scratch again. So let me erase this off. Just a second. Yes. Here. So these are the four structures or four tables which I would like to create in order to maintain the relations or in order to maintain a data for Imarticus. Now as said, Imarticus came to me and where they want to store the students' data into a relational database management system. So I, being a data engineer, I am designing a database for them. And I thought of that my data would not be stored in one table, it will be spread across in four tables. The very first is students, then there is course, then there is course info, and then there is course. So I've created those four tables and let me create relationships between them over here. So if you can see here, the relationships or the references between the table in order to maintain the referential integrity. Now all of us knows that what is referential integrity and why it is important. So we need one primary key and one foreign key in order to create the same. So in the students table, we decided that my student ID is going to act as a primary key. In my course table over here, the student ID is again acting as a primary key, which means each student is getting a unique course. Which means each student is getting a course over here. And here you can see the course ID, course name, fees and description. So here the course ID which I would be creating further is a primary key over here. And in this course, the student ID is going to act as a primary key over here. Now, I am not thinking to add primary key over here. So let me release it off so far. So this is where in the students table, where the students base would be stored, such as an ID, name, age and so on. In course table, the course details, which means which student has been allocated to what particular course would be stored. And then we have course info. That is the base course information, that what is the course name, what is the course title, what is a fee which the course has and what kind of benefits this course do provide. So there is a description for the same. And then there is a scores table which will be related. So there are primary keys. Let's create a relation. Now first I am connecting a students table with the course table, which means if the student is enrolled into the class, then or enrolled into the institute, then and only then he or she is able to be applicable for the course. So here there is a primary key and there is a primary key again. Now in order to create a relation, which column would be used? Student ID from the students table and ID from the course table. But I need a foreign key. As I said, primary key, which is a base key of one table, can act as a foreign key. Now, can behave like a foreign key over here. So, ID is acting as a foreign key. And as said, foreign keys are not particularly unique and not null. It can be or it cannot be as well. And it is supposed to be multiple into a table. So, here there is a primary key, foreign key relation which we created. And let me relate this table. So, now foreign key is helpful in maintaining referential integrity. So, foreign key goes to refer the primary key, which is that the course table takes references, means refers to the students table in order to fill in the details, in order to maintain the referential integrity. So, that is one relation which we create. Now, I want to create relation between course and course info. Now, course info has base course information. Let's say this institute is providing 5 courses over here. So, C1, C2, C3, C4, C5. So, each course information is different from the another. So there are 5 courses, and amongst these 5 courses only the data is going to be available into the course tables. So here this course ID, which is again going to be repeated, is going to act as a foreign key, which means the course numbers, the course IDs which will be used C1, C2, C3 are going to take references from the course table, course info table, which means if the courses are available, then and only then it will be applicable to the students in the course. So this is how we have created a relation. So one primary, one foreign key and one primary key. And then scores table. Now what is the scores table? In this scores table, primary key of course. Now I cannot relate scores table with the students table. Why? IDs are there, student ID is a match, but why I can't relate? Now not all students have enrolled for the course, so I cannot get scores for all of them. Definitely the students who are a part of course, they would be applicable to get scores. So here the foreign key is the student ID. Now this key will refer. Refer means this will relate. Relate to which table? Course table's ID. Why? Because if I want to fill in the scores, the student should be doing the course. That's what I want. So you can see there is one primary key and one foreign key relation. So this is a referential or the relational database which we had created so far, and let's try to replicate the same practically and see how those relations are working. Now I'll show that how foreign key could be added after all the tables are created. It's not necessary or mandatory that foreign key needs to be created when you create a table. It could be added after the creation of tables. So we will be seeing that aspect as well. So if you can see, this is the relation or this is the reference or this are the relational integrity which I need to maintain into the table, and the data filling or the data manipulations, that is insert, update and delete, which we will be doing in the later stage, would be on those 4 tables. And I'll show step by step that how does an organization or how does the data get stored into this kind of tables and how we should maintain the flow of data which is there. So this is how the reference is being created. Let's try to create it practically. So I'll go on my code file. This is where I created. Now I'll create a course info table. So here if you can see, create course info table. So I'll be creating that table over here, that is course info table. And let me do a full screen. Zoom in a bit. Now course info table. What should I write? Create table. Obviously you all must be knowing the syntax of creating a table. So create table. When I say create and a table, it is definitely going to create a table. I say course info. So course underscore info is what the table name is. And in this, I would like to check what are the requirements over here. So I have decided in the course table, there will be course ID, course name, fees, and the description which is there. So let me add in. Now course ID over here is going to be varchar. Now it depends on me that what I want to keep. But I'll try to match the course IDs which are available over here. Let's say again, I write 4. Let me see. So here you can see course ID varchar 4, and that's what the data type should match if the relation needs to be created. Why? Because as you can see, the course ID from the course info table and course ID from the course table are creating a relation. And this is my primary key. I'm not giving any auto increment element because auto increment is only in the integers, not into your varchar. So primary key, that is the first column which is created. I want the course name. Now course name, what is the course name which I require? So as per this course name, I can add anything. Let me add varchar as 30. and I want the course name to be mandatory, not null. And here if you can see, I can add fees, that how much is the fees being paid. I can add it as an integer, big int, small int, however I want. So I've added as an integer over here. And if you want a decimal to be added, so I can add decimal. Decimal is a data type which takes floating elements, floating values. So I can take, let's say, 8 values. Out of this 2 are decimal. I'll try to fill in and show you that how does the data gets filled over here. So I have written this. So fees that are in decimals, which are there. Let me write this 10, 2. And obviously I want fields to be there, so not null. I cannot add unique because 2 of the courses can have same fees, so it's fine. And then I have description. And I give a data type as text. You all know that we have seen those data types when we understood that how does a create table happen, and in the create table the data types are must. That is that is SQL will ask you that what kind of data needs to be stored in what kind of columns. So here we have kept it. Here I have did a semicolon. If you can see carefully, there is no foreign key, primary key constraint, no foreign key and relation being created over here. The foreign key is into course table. That would be referencing to my course info table. But I cannot make the changes so far in the course table because it's already created. So here you can see I created a course info table. And I would like to create scores table. So create scores table. So let me see that what are the requisites which are there required. Student ID, module and the marks. So let me write create table. What is the table name? Scores. And in this I want student ID. Student ID, it is supposed to be an integer. Yes, I have not null, which means I want the student ID to be there. I have not implemented unique. Why? Because one student can give one course or one mocks multiple number of times, and every time the scores are being populated and it is being stored into the database. So I cannot keep the student ID is going to be unique because one student can give 10 mocks or 10 particular marks could be given to each of the student. So here I have written not null. I have not even added unique over here. So course student ID, then what is there? What do we require? Module. Module, that which module the mocks are being conducted of or which module scores are being reflected over here. So this is varchar and the varchar would be 30. Let's say I can give a bigger module as well. And I give, let's say, not null. And here in this, after varchar in this, I'll give scores. Scores, which is an integer, or it could be decimal as well. So I've added it as integer, that it will be a fixed score or a finite score which is there. And let me add like not null. And I am not adding unique because 2 or 3 students can have same score. So I've kept it as not null. And I have kept it as default as well. But let me try to modify this column ahead with the help of alter. So this is their scores in not null, which is being mentioned, and this is a table being created. I didn't create any foreign key, primary key relation. Let us add it from scratch later when the table is pre-created, and if you want to relate the table with the another table, how you would be doing. So there are 4 tables created into my database by me. And these are the 4 tables where the information will be stored for the Imarticus students in order to maintain the databases. So we have created the tables so far, and now we will be proceeding further in understanding that how does an alter works. If you have not given the relationships earlier when the tables were created, how you can add it at the later end. And then we'll see that how does the insert and updation and deletion operations happen, and the rules which we understood with related to the reference table and the referencing table. Let's try to understand with a practical example that are they actually true or not. So this is how we have just created the tables. Now the structure is being created so far. Let's modify the structure with the help of the rest of the commands, and then let's proceed further with the next part. So, as we have briefly understood about the create statement with respect to creating a database as well as creating a table, now let's talk and understand something about alter. Now, what is an alter? Now, when I talk about alter as a statement, what does alter do? Now, many people think that alter is going to alter my data which is being stored into the values or the data which is being stored into the rows, but not as such. Alter is a part of DDL commands, and whenever I talk upon DDL commands, as said, they work on definition, that is a structure, that is a layout. So, nothing with respect to the values would be taken into consideration, but yes, the data is going to make changes, or the model is going to make changes, or my SQL server is going to make changes. But what kind of changes are those? Those changes are structural changes. So let's understand alter module in detail with some practical examples with the database which we have created, and let's see that how does an alteration works. So when I talk upon alter as a command, it is one of the most essential command in the MySQL server, as it also helps us to maintain data integrity, which also manages the database schema according to the requirements. Wherever necessary structural changes are required, that could be easily done with the help of alter. Now, alter statement is used to change the structure of an existing table. Now, what kind of structural changes do you think so could be added? Is with respect to adding a new column, modifying the existing one, or making new necessary changes into the same. So it can also add, delete, modify, and drop columns, change the data type of a particular column, create indexes as such, or even add another primary key to a table. So those all things could be taken care of with the help of alter. However, alter offers significant flexibility, so we have to use it very wisely. That even if slight alterations are not happening or not giving us a proper result, that might hamper our result set. And alter is a part of DDL command, so definitely it's auto committed in nature. Now, what does the auto committed means? Which means that whatever changes we are doing, they are permanently there. We cannot undo or we cannot roll back the changes which were there earlier. So overall, alter is powerful tool for developers, as it plays a very critical role in maintaining the optimizing database systems. So where you can use alter, we can use modify the table structure with the help of alter table command, and there are certain breakdowns with certain examples as such. The very first is adding a new column. Now imagine a database is being created and certain columns were not being a part of the database or the tables which was being created, and definitely I need to add more columns, and at that time I can take a feature of adding a new column with respect to alter. So if there is a need to store additional information such as employee's phone number, we can use the alter command to add a new column instead of creating a new table. Using alter, add multiple columns can also be added, which means with the help of alter, I can add multiple columns at once. Now, what is the meaning of altering syntax, adding a column? You can see there is a syntax available onto your screen, which we will be seeing later on with the help of a practical example. The alter table. Now remember, whenever you're using DDL commands, you have to mention that what is the changes which you are doing. Alter, you cannot say alter and the table name directly. You're altering a table, that is a database object. So you have to write alter table, table name, and then what is the functionality which you want to add. If you add a keyword known as add, which will help you to add a new column. So add column name, data type, and the constraints. It's as you can see, constraints are written in square bracket, which means they are not mandatory. And you can see a sample query which I have written, alter table employees, add column phone number with a varchar of 50. So that's what alter is. Similar to alter, it's not like always in order to add a new column. I can also modify the existing one. What does it means? Imagine that a table is being given, and I gave the name of the column such as email ID. And in this email ID, I wanted to add a default, but I forgot to add a default. What I want to do is I want to maintain all the columns as it is, but I just want to change the data type or the constraints which were added, or to add a new constraint which were there. So modify means make changes. Using modify, we can change the data type. Now remember, you can only change the data type and the constraints. You cannot modify or you cannot change the name of the column. Here, modify will only take care of adding a new data type or adding a new constraints or modifying the existing ones, not modifying the column name. So if an example, we can use modify to change the length of the first name column from varchar 50 to varchar 100. Here you can see. So the syntax still remains the same. It's very similar to the add wala part. So alter table name, modify column name which is there, and whatever is the new modification which you want to add for the existing column which is there. So modify uses or works for an existing column. So query alter table employees, modify column first name varchar 100, and I can give another constraint which is not null. Here you can see dropping a column. Imagine there are 10 to 50 columns there into my table, and not all of them are important. Certain of them could be created by mistake, or certain of them are not required to be there into the table, again capturing some space. So I want to drop certain columns. Now many people say that you have drop command separately. Then why you are using drop into alter? Now drop into alter will help me to drop a column. Now, column is a part of structure and it cannot be directly dropped or eliminated with the help of drop statement. You have to take help of alter in order to drop a column. So, for instance, if a column is no longer needed, it can be removed using drop. Syntax, if you can see, alter table name, and drop. If you write drop, it's fine. But if you mention drop column, it becomes more applicable. So, drop column and the column name. So, query, if you see, alter table employees, drop column and the birth date. So if I want to drop birth date as a column, I can easily drop it. So disadvantages of dropping a column. First is data loss. Obviously, it's a part of your DDL statement, so you cannot get back the data which has gone. So it loses the data, that is permanently removes all the columns in that, all the data in that particular column. Effect dependent objects. Obviously, if I have created a relation between two tables and if I'm dropping one column, definitely if it is related to some other table, it can affect the relation and that error could be seen. Rollback complication. Now, when you drop a particular column, you cannot undo, which means you cannot roll back as the statements are permanently stored. So that is one of the complications which drop column can face. Now, it comes to rename a column. Now, as we saw in modify, we changed the data type and we were changing the column name, which were there. We were changing the data type and we were changing the column constraints, not the data type particularly or not the data name particularly. But what if I want to change the data name or the column name over here? So we can change the column name or rename the column which is there known as change column. So there is a constraint or there is a keyword known as change column which will help me to change the name of the column entirely. Now this change will not only change your column name but also changes the column definition. I'll show you with a practical example the same. So we can rename a column of a table by using the change column keyword with alter table. So syntax, alter table name, change column, the older column name to the new column definition which you want to add. And there is a sample query, that is city I want to change to location with certain data types. So these are the parts which we can use in terms of alter. So let's see that how all of them could be practically implemented. So if you go on the database, you all must be remembering this database which we created, the Imarticus one, where the references were created by us, where certain references are yet not created, that is the course and course info and scores and the course table. Let's try to create those references also with respect to alter, and let's try to see more changes with respect to alter as a statement. So alter to implement changes in the structural part of the database, which means it will help me to implement the changes to the structure of the database or the database object. So the very first thing which we are going to see is add. So what does it do? It it adds a column and a constraint in a table. So it can add a column or it can add a constraint. Let's see both of them over here. Now, imagine that I have a students table. If you see, select star from students. That's a table which we have created. So if you can see, there is student ID, name, age, city, phone number and gender. What if I want to add? So let me write this in there, like adding a column. So what if I want to add a particular column named as address? So where should I add? So in order to add, I'll start with the syntax known as alter. Now I cannot say alter students, because if I do like this, it becomes practically wrong with respect to the definition. Here you can see students is not valid at this position. So alter table students. Maybe people will be thinking, okay, I have not completed the pattern, because of that there is an error. So if I write add, no need to mention column. It knows that when you are using add as a keyword, it is doing a column addition. If you want something extra, then you mention. But for a column, no need to mention column as such. So add what? Let me say that I want to add address as a column. Address, obviously I cannot add it directly like this. I have to mention the data type, as it's a fixed database schema, so it requires the data type to be mentioned. And I write address. Let's say the address needs to be varchar, and I give it as 100, which is there. So here you can see alter students, add address varchar. The syntax is complete. But there is still an error. Why? Because it's not accepting alter and the column name or the table name directly. You have to mention that which object are you altering. Alter table. And if you can see, once I put up the table, the error is gone. But when I remove the table, the error is still existing. So here if you do alter table, and it is going to run and execute my query, which is alter table students. And you can see it's affected. So if I see select star from table, there is address as a column added. But you can see all the columns which are being added are at the end. So when I run this query, you can see address is being added, but where does it looks like it's there at the end? Because I didn't mention the position where I want to add. But what if I will mention the position that I want to add after this or after that? For that, I'll be using second, that is alter adding a column after, let's say, city. So I want to add a column after city, which is there. So let's say I write alter table and then the student. So this syntax remains the same for all the altering commands. But if I write like this, it is going to make changes. And here if you can see alter table students, but what did I mention that what we have to do in terms of changes? No. So it is simply executing the code but doing nothing. So alter table, what I want to do is add. I know that when I write add, it is adding or talking about columns. So I want to add a column named as email. You all must be knowing emails are required for the students to be there. And I write it as varchar, with varchar as 100. And if the email is not there, I want to mention that default not available. that if the student didn't mention the email, instead of keeping and storing the result as blank, I can give a constraint, that is rule, that don't store it blank. Instead of blank, replace it with nothing called as not available. So which is there, but I want to add after what? City. Now remember, after adding this entire thing, if you run and execute, the column would be added, but definitely at the end. Email column would be created, but at the end. In order to SQL, I have to specify something called as after. Now what does after says? That I want to add this column, that is for sure, but after which column? So I have to add it after which? City column. So when I run and execute the code, and when I see now, you can see after city, there is email as a column generated. If I don't write the keyword known as after, it is going to be adding the column by default at the end. So this is how you can add a column at a specific position, which you can do. Now many people will ask, can I do it for before? No, because before as a keyword is not suitable in MySQL, but it's not like you cannot do it before, you can. Just that the keyword over here is not suitable. So here you can see it's not suitable. You should expecting that it should end instead of writing what? Before. So before is not acceptable, but after you can definitely do into your SQL servers, MySQL servers particularly. So this is how we saw that how we can add a new column into your table. But what if I want to add a relation? That is adding a foreign key. Now one of the most important concept which people say that, ma'am, when I have created a table, let's say I've created a table earlier, but I didn't add a foreign key constraint, I didn't created a relation, I forgot to create a relation, how I can create after that? Should I delete the table? Should I drop the table and create it again? Should I eliminate all the information now which is stored and should I enter it again? No need. You have to just use alter in order to add the referential integrity which you forgot to add in the earlier part. So if you can see, we added a relation of course table referencing to students table on the basis of what? ID from the course and student ID from the students. Now let's say I want to create this relation where in the course table there is one more foreign key. As you can see, the course table is pre-created and there was one foreign key earlier. But if I want to add one more foreign key in order to create the referential integrity, could I be able to add? Yes, because a table can have multiple foreign keys. And that key is referencing to the course information, which means the courses which are available into the institute, it will first refer to that. And if the course name is not available, then it will not be able to allocating it to the students. So that is what the referential integrity part will come over here. But if you can see in the database which I have, the course table has only one foreign key. And this foreign key is targeting the students table on the basis of student ID. I didn't had another foreign key which targets to course info table. So I will be creating it one. So what I have to do is alter and I'll write table. Obviously, I'm going to alter a database object, so I'll mention alter table. So which table I have to mention is course. So if you can see, course table is being added. So alter table course, and then what I wanted to do is add. But when I just write add, it is thinking of to add a column. But do you think so I want to add a column? No. I want to add a constraint, and that constraint is nothing but foreign key. So I will mention something called as constraint. That add what? Add a constraint. Now which constraint do you think so is required? Can you see? Incomplete the statement. If I just write this and when I execute, it's showing me error. A statement is incomplete. It is expecting check foreign key, primary key and unique as a constraint. So add constraint what? I want to add a foreign key. But before going to addition, you have to name that constraint. If you can see over here, we didn't give a name, but by default, the system has created a name, that is course1 IBFK1. So here I can write any name to the foreign key relation could be given. Add constraint FK1. What I have to do? I have to add a foreign key. So in the course table, I want to add a foreign key, which is what? Course ID. So add a foreign key, course ID, which goes and refers. So references, what? It refers to which table? Course info. Which means if the course information is available, then and only then this course could be allocated to that particular individual. So course info, and which column from the course info? That is nothing but course ID. So this is how, and you can see the reference is being created. Now let me explain you this code again and understand it in detail. So if you can see the database which we created, in this there was only one foreign key and primary key relation created. The table of course was created, but it consists of one foreign key. If I want to add another foreign key, I'm using the alter table command in order to something called as add. Now what does it do? If you can see, when I talk upon add, it is doing alter table course add. If I just mention add, it will think of it as a column, but it's a constraint. So add what? Constraint. Now the constraint will definitely have some name, because without name the constraints would not be called. There are certain constraints which consist of names. So here you can see foreign key 1. And what is this constraint? It's a foreign key. Now the name could be anything. I have given it FK1. If you want to write something else, you can write it something else. So foreign key, which column from the course table is acting as a foreign key? Course ID. So here you can see the course ID from this table refers to the ID to the course info table in order to give only those courses which are available into the institute. So if you can see, course ID is my foreign key, which references, which means it goes to the parent table. And what is my parent table over here? That is course info, which has course ID, which is used for relation. And this is how it is being created. If I go and execute it, it will be done. Now, what are the certain instances where this execution is not going to happen and how to avoid it? First of all, the two columns where the referential integrity is being created need to maintain a same data type. Now, what does it mean? Now, if you see course ID in the course table, what's the course ID? Varchar as 4. And if you see course ID in the course info table, let me show you. In the course info table, it's varchar 4. It doesn't matter that a constraint is given or not, but the data type should match over here. And you can see it is matching. And this is being created. If I refresh, you can see the FK1 which we created. So what does it do? FK1, course info, course ID and course ID. On update, I have not passed anything such as cascade, set null and so on. So what does it do? By default, on update restrict, on delete restrict, which means on update also it will restrict, it will throw out an error. On delete also it is going to restrict and throw out an error for us. So this is how a foreign key constraint could be added. Now I want to add one more foreign key which is there. That is the course table is going to relate with the course table on the basis of student ID and ID. So let me create that relation. Now everyone must be understood that. So here I am adding a foreign key with requirements. Now how does it looks? That is, I want to add that cascade, set null and options. So here if you can see alter table, and which table I am going to alter is course, because in that a foreign key is being created. So alter table which? Course. And in this, I want to add what? Add a constraint. Now, I've added a constraint over here, and I'll give constraint name as SC1, that is score table 1. I can give any name, whichever I like of my choice. Just be careful with the spaces. So what I want foreign key to be created in my scores table, which would be nothing but the student ID. So student ID over here acts as a foreign key because it will go and refer to the course table for the student's marks. Let's say, and what does it do? It references course table, that is course table, on behalf of what? On behalf of ID. So this is there. Now the major challenges come. That is, if I don't pass anything, it is going to restrict, which means whenever I try to do changes, whenever I try to do modification, that will not be acceptable. But if I want on delete cascade, on delete restrict. So on delete, which means if I want to delete anything, it will take it as cascade. And I can write on update, which is restrict. So I can choose which criteria, which condition I want, or which keyword is required, or which requirement is there. So I create this. This is being created. You can refresh it, and it's available into which table for me? The scores table. Just a second. Scores table. And in this, you can see a foreign key being created. And you can see SC_1. So this is how a foreign key is being created by some references such as on delete cascade and on delete restrict. So this was all about the add as an operation with respect to adding a new column into your table. So I hope you have understood about add. Now we will understand and think about, or we will talk about modify. So as you can see that we saw with add, now let's talk upon modify. Now what does modify do? It modifies the column definition, which means modify, change. Don't change the name but change the definition. So it modifies the column definition but doesn't change the column name. This is one thing which you all have to keep in mind, that modify as a keyword with alter is not going to change the column name. It is just going to make the changes with respect to column definition. Now let's see how. Imagine that I do select star from students as a table. This is the table. Now I can do describe in order to see that what all information is being provided or what all data types are being used. In this is an integer, varchar, age, city, email, phone number, gender, and then there is something called as address. And you can see, is there any default, not default, and not. So in the students table, I don't think so any column modifications are required. But let's say I go in select star from scores. I go over here, and in this you can see these are 3 columns, and I write describe scores. So I want to describe what scores. You can see student ID. It is acting as a primary key. Sorry, it is acting as a foreign key. So there is a keyword known as mul. Here module varchar 30. Now scores integer, and then there is no one. Now what if I want to change that? If the module is not given, then give a default value. If the scores are not given, then give a default value. So here let's try to understand that. So if I write select, if I want to use modification, so modify, with respect to modifying the column by adding a constraint. Now you can add a constraint over here. You can do alter table. So you can do alter table, and in that alter table, which table you want to modify? Let's say I'll do scores. And then in the score, I will be doing modify. Modify what? What do you want to modify? I want to modify which column over here, which is nothing but module. So module as a column needs to be modified. That is, it needs to be changed with respect to what? With respect to not the name but the column definition. Let's say I give varchar as 50 and I write it as default. And if the module is not available for that particular students, then I want to write it as soft skills. Which means if none of the student has mentioned the modules, that means it's a soft skill module. So that's what I wanted to do. And if I do this, you can see all the commands which I'm executing are correctly affected, and that's why there is no error arising. If there is any error, I'll definitely try to solve it. So you can see this has been modified, and if I do describe scores as a table, and if you can see here, earlier there was no default value which was there. So module varchar yes, soft skill is there as a default. So this is how we have added a modified column or a modified column definition over here. Let me take one more example with respect to the students table itself. So in the students table, let's say I want to change the address ka data type from address varchar to text. So I'm modifying the existing data type, not the table name, not the column name, just the existing type of data. So modifying existing column definition. Just the definition needs to be modified. And how will I do it? For that, I'll do modify. Modify what? But I cannot write modify directly, so I have to mention what? Alter table. What is the table name? Known as scores. And in this, I'll do what? Modify. What I want to modify over here is nothing but the column named as address. Now, I will not give any of the previous available things. I'll give that modify address, and in this, I'll say that it needs what? A text to be added. And when I execute it, you can see, oh sorry, not in scores but in students. It's there, and I have modified it as text. So if you see describe students, you can see these modifications are happening. And in this, the data type is what? Text. And data type as text consists of null value. So null is yes. So here you can see this is how you modify. Now after modifying it, if I do it again, let's say if I add default, that is no address found. If I want to give default over here, if I execute this code, you can see in default, in your text as a data type, the default element is not particularly used so widely. So you have to change the data type to either to char or varchar in order to be beneficial with default as a data type. But here you can see with text, this is not a feasible approach. So I can change it to varchar, and I can change it to varchar 200. So here you can see this would be changing and describe. Earlier it was text, but it has changed to varchar 200 null, yes. And here you can see no address found as a default, which means if any of the student failed to fill in the address details for the same, it's not going to give us error or blanks. It will mention that no address is being found over here. So this is how modify as a statement works. Now let's proceed further and in and let's understand how does change column works and what is the difference between modify and change column. As you can see that we have understood the modify statement, let's try to understand the change column statement and how it is different from the modify statement which is there. Now, as you can see, the describe of my table, let's say describe what students. The code is written. Let me execute this one only. So in this describe student, let's say I want to change this column name from phone to contact, which means I want to change it from phone as such to contact. So if I want to change it from phone to contact, I have to change the column name. But the definition didn't require to be changed. But when I just want to change the column name only, it's not feasible approach into my SQL. I have to change the column name as well as the definition, which means I have to replace an entire column with the newer column as such. So here, it's not only the name which will be changed, the definition could also be changed. So how, let's see, the changing the column name happens. So third, which is nothing but change column, which is nothing but changing the column from phone to contact. That is, I want to change the column name from phone to contact. So how I will change, if you can see, alter table students. Alter table students. Now remember, modify can change the column definition and the constraints, but change column is definitely going to change your column name with respect to the column definitions. So when I do change column, you have to mention this. Change column how? You have to write the existing column name. What is the existing column name which I have is phone, and what is the new name which I want to give? That is what? Contact. So the existing column name is phone and the new column name which I want to provide is contact. And when I try to make the changes, I cannot do only this. Why? Because if you see there is an error, the statement is incomplete. It doesn't require only the name. It requires the data type as well. You cannot say that I'll just change the column name, but let it take the existing data type. That's not possible. You have to write the data type or the column definition which is there. So let's say I write it as begin. So here, if you can see, when I execute it, it has been changed, and when I see the table, here you can see it was earlier phone, but it is now as contact. So these are the changes which we can see into our table. So all those changes are structural changes which are there. Column 4, which is there, and let's say I have my table known as select star from, let's say, from scores. So here you can see student ID, module, and the scores as a column being available. Now let's say I want to change the module to topic. So how will I change the name over here? I have to do alter table. I don't have to change definition. I want to change the name. But definitely, if I want to change the name, I have to mention the previous name and a new name with a new column definition. So alter table. What is the table name? Scores. Where I will write change column, which is there, and change column to what? First, I have to write the existing column name, which is module, and then I have to change it to topic or concept or whatever it is. So topic, and then I have to mention the data type. Let's say I'll write varchar as 50, and I will give a default. Now if the value is missing into that column, don't keep it missing. I want the default to be there as soft skills. If you remember, we have added the same over here. So soft skills, we saw, and when we execute, it is done. So if you see the scores table, instead of module, now it has something called as topic. So this is how change column works. Now, many people say that modify and change column are the same commands which we can use in alter. No, both are the two different commands, both are doing two different operations. So when I talk upon modify, if you can see, modify is modifying the existing column definition, but doesn't change the column name. Whereas change column, it doesn't modify the definition only, but it changes the name of the column, which means it will try to replace an entire column with something called as a new column or a new attribute with respect to its name, with respect to its column definition. Why column definition becomes mandatory? Let's say for an example, there was email as a column and email was varchar. You want to change from email to phone number. Obviously, email being varchar and phone number being an integer. You cannot say that change email to phone. The data type might cause discrepancy, and that's the reason why they don't only require the name change but also require the column definition change. So here you can see changes the column entirely, that is column name as well as its definition would be changed. So this was the difference between modify and change column for the same. So let's say we have seen a lot of them. What if someone says that I want to drop a column, which means the column is not that important into my data set. So dropping a column. Imagine that I have that student tables, select star from students. And I know that student ID is important, very important, because there is a referential integrity. Name of the student, yes, it's important when I want to find the details. Age, yes. City, yes. Email, yes. Contact, yes. Gender and address, somewhat I'm dicey. But address, I definitely don't want it. I don't want address to be there stored into my table, because every time I try to insert, it will ask me for address. Yeah, definitely, I can keep it as unique, or I can keep it as empty without any constraint. So it can accept null, but I don't want that column to be unnecessarily there into my table. So if any column needs to be dropped, you can use alter statement for the same, which means eliminating a column. Now, many people say that when you're trying to eliminate a column or remove a column or get rid of that column from your existing table, you will use drop. So here you cannot write drop column. You cannot write drop column students dot address. This is one of the wrong criteria which is being mentioned over here. And many people, when it is asked into interview, can you try and show me how does a column would be dropped from a table, do this approach, and that's when they go wrong. Their basics are not clear. What does it say? That a structural changes are required. The structural alterations are required. So here there is an alteration happening. That is, one part of the structure is being altered, it's being removed, it's being eliminated. And for that, you cannot use a direct statement of drop. You can see drop is not valid at this position. Expecting, it is expecting alter to be there. You can see alter, analyze, and something it is expecting before the statement is being written. So this is the wrong way to do it. So what I will do is alter table, and what is the table name? Students. So you have to alter it with this particular part. Alter table students, and what you have to do, drop. So if you just mention drop, it will understand that the column needs to be dropped. So drop address. No need to give any column definition. Why? Because dropping, it is trying to eliminate all of them over here. So drop address, it can directly drop address as a column. So when you see the table, you can see address as a column is not there. If I try to execute this code again, it will throw me an error. Cannot drop because it's not there. So can drop address, check for the column or the key exist. This column doesn't exist into my table and definitely I cannot drop it off. So once it is gone, it's gone. You cannot run this statement a number of times. This is what I wanted to show. So if you want to drop a column, so you'll mention drop column. If you want to drop a constraint which you created, let's say fk1, which we created, so you will write drop constraint. So both the things, it can drop a column, it can drop a constraint with the help of something called as alter. So this was dropping a particular column or the drop keyword into your alter. So it's used to remove the column from the table. And then comes something called as rename. Renaming the table. So it is trying to rename the table. Now, here in my tables, there is referential integrity being maintained, which means one table is related to another table. So there are some or the other relations created between the tables. So when I try to rename a table name, it will cause me errors. Why? Because that table is being referenced somewhere, so that relation would be hampered. So if the relations are not there and if I want to change the table name, which is there, if you can see, in my Imarticus database, we have one table. We have one table which is there, which is without hassle. So in this, we have one table which was created without hassle. That is, I took it somewhere from the CSV file and I loaded it over here. So it is a table which is created without hassle and I want to change the name. Now it is having a name of advertising, but I want to mention that advertising details or advertisement or let's say marketing, something like that, or sales, something like that. I want to change the name. I don't want the advertising as a name to be there into my table. So how will I change the name of the table? That is rename. So if I first show you select star from which table? Advertising. And if I execute, you can see these are the columns which are there. Now let's say I don't want this, my unknown column. I don't want this column. So what I will do is alter table. Alter table what? Alter table advertising. And my unknown column, which means if the column name is blank, this column name would be given. So I want drop column. So I can write drop column. What? My unknown column. So if it tries to drop, you can see in the advertising table, it has been eliminated. So that column is gone. Now what I want to do is I want to rename. So this is a data which is being stored in advertisement table and I want to rename. So in order to rename, what I can do is alter table and table name is advertising. Rename, which means I have to rename. Rename to, which means rename it to what? So I will write rename to. Rename to what? If you can see, it will ask me, okay, what you want to rename, expecting a new table name. You can see statement is incomplete. It is expecting a new table name to be there. So what is a new table name which I want? Advertise. So advertisement is a name which I want to give to this table, not advertising. So here if you can see, I just have to refresh and you can see from advertising, it has changed to advertisement. So if I do select star from the previous name, which was advertising, if I execute this code, it is throwing me an error. Table Imarticus database dot advertising doesn't exist. Why? Because this table name has completely changed. So if I write select star from advertisement, the new table name, you can see this is an information which is being shown. So in order to rename the table, you can use the rename command over here. So we saw that how does alter will help you to make the alterations with respect to the structure. Now what kind of alterations you can do with respect to your table which you have created? It could be adding a column, it could be modifying the existing column without changing the column name, just changing the column definition and the constraints. Then we saw how do we change a column entirely. Now what is the meaning of entirely? Entirely means the column name as well as its definition. Then we saw that how do we drop a column, which means if a column is available into my table and I don't want that column, I want it to be eliminated from my table, then I can use something called as drop column with alter. And if I want to change the name of the table with some new name from the existing name, I can use something called as rename to with the help of alter in order to make those changes. So this is how alter as a statement works. Now it's not that only alteration with respect to a table is being possible. You can alter the other database objects as well. But as we were seeing the DDL statements, we saw that how does an alter statement works in terms of altering the structure for a table which is being created. So that's all with respect to alter. I hope you understood the same.